And action. James had a question about weight training and how to start. So, when you're going to high school, usually you'll be able to get a coach to show you how to use the machines. Sometimes the sports-specific coaches, like the soccer coach, the softball coach, the baseball coach, the football coach, they'll actually have strength coaches in the high school. That'll show you how to do that stuff, develop a little bit of power specific for your sport, and then maybe tailor-make a personal program. But if you're not involved in any sports, or if you're on the bench at this point in time because of an injury, I've come up with some basics. There are 4 basic movements that are big body part movements, or more regional movements. If you start with the regional movements, and then you work your way as you advance, as you get better, as you become knowledgeable, and as you continue with good form, you get to the smaller body parts. I think that's a safer way to start. So I've put together the 4 basics. And the 4 basics are bench press, overhead press, lat pull downs, and squats. So bench press essentially is when you're doing the bench press. So that kind of movement develops the pecs. Now all you want to do is you take the bar or the machine handles and you just push out straight. Try not to lock your arms straight out. Try to put it right before you extend, right before full extension. Especially if you have hyperextended elbows, you don't want to be locking out. And then you lower back down. If you do about, in the beginning, 10 repetitions and then 3 sets with a little bit of a break, a minute or 2 between the sets, that's cool. Usually the idea is you catch your breath, but in the beginning you're not going to be doing it fast enough or hard enough or heavy enough to lose your breath. You just have to work on form. Usually it's as you push your air out too. Shh. And then you go back in. Shh. That's the way I do it. And sometimes you can do the same thing with overhead press. So bench press is for developing the pecs. Overhead press is for developing the shoulders, or the deltoids. The deltoids, if you are strict, you can just lift up straight, try to keep your scapula or shoulder blades in one plane, and then, again, not to full extension, and you let it go. That's to develop mostly upper body. Then we do lat pull downs. Now we're getting towards the back. Lat pull downs, or when you take a bar, you lock your feet and your knees underneath the cushion, take the bar, and you bring it down to behind your back or in front of your face. So if you do that on a regular basis, it develops these things called the latissimus dorsi. Now I've put down an alternative because if your gym isn't funded or if your school is a small school, you might not have lat pull down bars. So pull-ups are reasonable. Pull-ups are, I've done it in my office videos before, where you just hook something of a bar into the overhead of a doorway or a door jamb, and you just pull yourself up. These are called chin-ups. When you do it like this, you develop a lot of bicep strength, but pull-ups are when you go a little bit wider. So the theory is the wider you hold your arms, the wider your latissimus dorsi will be. The more narrow you hold your arms, the more thicker your back will be. That's the movement. So I think I agree with that as far as wider angle develops the lats, whereas narrow angle develops the rhomboids back there. Rhomboids are the things that pull the shoulder blades together. They're big movements, so if you pull yourself up, you're going to be developing and moving all those muscles anyway. And we're not getting into targeted exercise, we're just getting into movement to break into the weight training program. And remember, as far as bench press, you're not going to be able to lift your weight out of the gates. You're not going to be able to overhead press your weight out of the gates or pull down or pull yourself up. You might need a little assistance. That's why it's nice to work your way into it. But by 3 months' time, you should have maximized, gotten to the point where you get to that 1 rep max. And let's talk about that. 1 rep max is usually a pinnacle or a summit that I try to get to every 3 months. I try to change the summit I get to. That way muscle and goals are different. It always keeps that exciting. So a 1 rep max is when you get to the last repetition of the last set. And especially if it's just 1 rep, you just build up to that. You can do it via pyramids when you do a set of 10, then you go a set of 8, you go a set of 5, 2, and then 1 rep max. That's the hardest lift if you're doing bench press. The hardest lift that you can get to good form, and then back down again. So that usually tests your power, tests your strength. It gives you something to go for. Because I think that most humans should be able to keep on pushing the envelope. If you're stagnant and you just do the same amount of weight, same amount of repetitions every time, even if you get a sweat out of it, and even if you feel full, you're not really challenging your body. Again, I've talked about this with my runners. The human body has this way to become very efficient. If you've ever seen a marathon go by, I work the marathon tent all the time. Usually at the 13-mile mark at the first aid tent, you can hear the Kenyans just float by. You actually don't hear them, you just see them. And then you can see the elites come by, but they're very efficient with their movement. Well, the same thing can go with weight training. If you get very efficient with your movement, you can think that you're getting a good workout, but if you've been using the same amount of reps, same amount of sets, same amount of weight for a year, you're not really challenging your muscle. So if you want the muscles to grow, if you want to lose weight, try to pull some of that fat out of the visceral area, then you have to push the dynamic of body and push the limits a bit. So it's always nice if, and that's painful, but if you can get a coach, it'll be more sustainable, because what are we doing with all this stuff? We're inflicting pain. Essentially, we're inflicting pain on ourselves. We're becoming more tolerant to pain. We're building muscle, we're building endurance, we're causing a hormone rush, hopefully getting the body to work better. So that's the first step to any medical problem, whether it's high blood pressure, depression, Crohn's disease. The first step is always to move, and exercise with weights is one form of movement. I think this is the more efficient way to lose weight, more so than cardio. But again, you just have to make sure you don't hurt yourself. Now, if you're not in high school and you're in your 50s and 60s and you have problems with joints, I would be very careful. Now, sometimes if your doctor words it properly, he can get you to a physical therapist. And the physical therapists, they've done they have a BA in science usually. Then they do another 3 to 4 years of physical therapy school. So they do a lot of work, and they get PhDs from what I understand. So they're not really trainers or personal trainers, but they can design a routine that'll make that specific area that you have a problem with, whether it's a rotator cuff or a knee problem. They can help work the dynamics so you can make this strong, and then they can dovetail you into an exercise routine that you might be able to apply in the gym. They can't be there in the gym with you, but they can initiate it. So that's what's cool about being older and having insurance. You might be able to get physical therapy. I can usually get my patients to physical therapy as prehabilitation. And I have a great physical therapist at the Streamwood Park District that works for Advocate. It takes my patients from the physical therapy room up into the gym when they're ready. So then after that though, when you're discharged, you really have to find a personal trainer or somebody of a strength coach. Finally, we have squats. So squats are essentially what they are. You can either use a bar behind you, or you can use pads on a sled. But usually we get to watching your chin up and legs parallel to the floor. You try not to get your knees too far ahead of your feet, because when they are, you're keeping your back straight, but you're also putting a lot of torque on the knee. If you kind of jut your butt out, keep the knees behind the toes where you can always see your toes, that's a better form. It'll save your knees. So those are the basics of what I would expect as far as movement. Bench press, and if you don't have a bench and it's more of a universal machine, that's fine. If it's a Nautilus looking machine or a Cybex machine, that's fine too. It doesn't have to be a bench, but you're still working on the pecs, still working on the deltoids, still working on the latissimus dorsi, still working on the legs. Those are big body parts. If you get that down, you shoot for 3 sets of about 6 to 10 repetitions. I think that's good. Usually you want to work out about 3 times a week, because the muscle, if it's worked properly, will take about 48 hours to recuperate and rebuild and heal. And yeah, we push and hopefully make changes to the muscle that make it stronger. If you push too hard, you're going to crash and get injured. That's not good either. If you keep on doing that, you really have to have a coach hired to see what you're doing wrong. Once you get really gifted with those movements and you get bored with them, then you can actually get to ab work, arm work, biceps, triceps, upright rows or shrugs for these things called the trapezius muscles. And the neck, usually if you see those big necks of football players and wrestlers, That's because they have really big trapezius muscles. Like Herschel Walker, back in the 80s, he was nothing but a neck. And then you have extensions and curls for the legs. It's more specific than squats. If you really want to hit and bomb your thighs, to get big thighs, muscular hamstrings, and a nice muscular butt, then that's what you want to do. And then finally calves, but everybody hates calves. Donkey calf raises. So these are the fine-tuned things that you want to get to add to these guys. But by the time you get to do the big movements and then the fine movements, you'll be in the gym for about an hour. So expect that if you're in a high school gym, you won't be able to use all those machines at the same time. But if you do, hopefully you have coordination in the gym with other people, and you go from one machine to the next machine to the next machine. Now, if you don't have that opportunity and everybody's just doing their own thing, then you got to stick with the machine, take that little break between sets, and then move on to the next body part. But as far as how long, well, if you see somebody taking his time between sets and texting or getting on the phone, get that person off the machine because he's wasting time. You don't have to take more than 2 minutes of rest time unless you're really pushing the envelope or there's a problem with your form. So always take your time with learning the form. Read and learn or look up about the proper movements. Ask other people. Watch other people in the gym. If you proceed on and you get bored with these things up here, then it's a signal that it's time to advance. Now, if you're bored because you're using only light weight, then that's when you start to advance. You try to get to the point where the only thing you can get to is 6. Usually the rule of thumb is repetitions for upper body. If you can do 6, that way by the time you do the number 6 repetition, that is it. You got to rack the weights, put them back because you're spent. Now, usually that's the amount of repetitions for a good set. And again, you go for 3 sets. The lower extremity, if you can get to about 10, usually 10 repetitions or squats or leg presses or leg curls. Usually 10 repetitions is good for the lower extremity because bigger muscle group, it can tolerate more, has more endurance. And that, in a nutshell, is the way I would usually start an exercise routine. Once you get to body, you can do 3 movements per body part. That's getting fancy. That's when you are really gifted. But just to start a routine, that's what I would say. James, hopefully this gives you a little bit of a template about what to do, how to attack your first couple months in the gym. And maybe if you can't get, or you're not getting anywhere, or you're getting injured, then you really have to take the investment of a personal trainer, somebody that's well versed in what to do, how to design something for you, and progress on from there.